Okay, hey everybody, all right, hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today at RG Podcast. This is Isaiah Diesel, and I'm joined with Mr. Jeff Schoep, now joining for the third time. And how are you doing tonight? It's a beautiful morning today, but how are you
And
doing tonight, Jeff?
it is night here. Good. Thanks for having me back. It's an honor.
Yeah, you're looking great, man, I must say. And before I start off, it's a new year, so it's a new opportunities for life. And I just wanted really quick, if you have any New Year's resolutions?
Well, New Year's resolutions to do more than I did last year, and try to do my best for humanity. Really.
Right, right. So amazing. Actually, about maybe about 3 years ago, I started doing some self-help stuff, and one of the assignments was to write a letter to yourself and talk about like what you did that year. And I was feeling really unaccomplished because there was so much that I hadn't accomplished yet. And yet, when I wrote that letter, I looked back and I was like, "Oh my God, I did more this year than I've ever done in my life." And so but it's a process. So, we don't change over. You don't deconvert overnight. You don't stop smoking overnight. You don't stop being an alcoholic overnight. It's a process with everything, right? Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
for sure. Yeah.
So that's great. Have you gotten a chance to look over the questions that I sent you?
I glanced at them, but just fire away. It's okay.
Okay. Well, let's ask something that has nothing to do with this. First and foremost, you and I have both done a little bit of traveling, and I was wondering if you could tell me what was your favorite country that you've seen.
Ooh, that's a great question. I've been some really interesting places, but I'd say that probably the coolest place I've ever been was Guatemala, and seeing the excuse me, seeing the Temple of the Jaguar, the Mayan ruins, the
I
pyramids in
bet.
the forests and or in the rainforest there, and being able to climb those ancient structures. A lot of people don't even know there's pyramids in those jungles, and there are entire cities. It is absolutely
Yeah,
phenomenal.
that is a very interesting situation, the Maya collapse, and that there's still a lot of places, maybe dozens of places that haven't even been discovered there in the jungles because it's just covered by jungles. Actually, a really cool story. I will tell you this. I hosted these guys from that were American, but they were living in Japan, and I guess after they graduated college, they went on like a road trip, and so they got like a cheap car and just drove down to Mexico, and they talked about like just finding uh, one of the off the road places that like temples that you'd never find. Like not one of the everyone wants to go to the touristy ones. It was like the Temple of the Sun, and everyone wants to go to those ones. So they went and found one, and they were describing it to me like, wow, it's amazing. But okay, and were you there before or after you were in the movement?
I was still in the movement, and you mentioned Mexico too. I've been all over in Mexico and saw some of those sites there too, because they've got they've got Mayan temples there,
Oh
and
God,
Chichen Itza, Tulum, you name it. There's a lot of sites in Mexico. I love Mexico.
that's just so. That is so. I'm sorry to share this, but we were talking a little bit about your deconversion, and you were talking about how you weren't exactly consistent with your views, and you talked about you dated a few girls while you were in the movement that weren't they weren't a pure blood, a pure white blood, and so traveling to other places. I honestly, we've talked a little bit about like why I don't really have a beef with people who have those kind of views in the first place, because part of it is like if you want to live in delusion, like you have a right to live in delusion. Like if you want to believe that white people are superior or gonna than Asian people, like you believe that all you want, but you come here and see some of the stuff I've seen in Asia, and you're not gonna be seeing the same thing. And I'm just being objective in that. So, but it's like you want to believe white people are superior, like doesn't bother me at all. Like it doesn't. I see people everyone is equal, and so I just know better than that, and I've visited enough countries to know that there's no truth in that statement. So I don't have a beef with that. It's like now, obviously, trying to hurt people. we're gonna have a problem there when it goes to actual physical violence. Then that's a different story. But for me, it's like if I met someone who had visited like Saturn or whatever, and they came back and they've gone throughout the galaxy, and they came back and had a conversation with me, the things that I believe in just wouldn't even, or they believe in, wouldn't make sense to me because I haven't seen those things. So I've gotten a chance to go to dozens of countries, and so if people are stuck in a small-minded view of we're the best and everyone else is worse, it's like I just feel sorry for someone who's actually. I just want to tell you something. I'm translating these sermons for these Koreans, and the sermon used a an idiom that I've never heard of before, and I want to ask you if you could just think of it off the top of your head what this is referring to. Okay, the expression is people are like frogs in a well. If you hear that expression, what would you think?
Hmm. Well, that you can't, probably that you can't get out of the well. That, if
Yeah,
you're a frog in a well, you're stuck down there, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. You're just like so a frog who spent his whole life in a well would be like a say someone who's born in the movement, who's that's all they're exposed to. So if
Mm-hmm.
that's all you're exposed to, like it's like someone who's born in the countryside, they've never seen the city. Like, why would you be angry at someone who doesn't know what like a you know what I mean, like a metro system is? You know what I mean? So me is just kind of like, okay, this person is just ignorant, and that's used very frequently pejoratively, but it's a reality that you know people are ignorant. I'm ignorant about a lot of things, so I don't really. I think the best way to approach that situation is with education and trying to get people to have those experiences, not like with hatred. So
For sure. I agree
you
with you
agree with that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you agree with me. But okay, so the first question I have for you is, what is the goal and future of your organization? What would you like to see done now, and just what are you working towards, brother?
Well, with Beyond Barriers, what we're working towards is trying to help change people, try to help get people out of that life, out of extremism, moving forward with their lives, and finding a better way. And a lot of times, I think when people look at people that are involved in these extremist groups, the first thing that comes to mind is to tell them that they're wrong. To tell them that
Right, right,
they're evil, that it's hateful, all that kind of stuff. And we don't really do that. They figure that out on their own, as we're offering different perspectives and different ways of looking at
right,
things,
right,
and just basically not
right.
expecting them to change overnight. It doesn't
Not
happen like the
expecting
snap
it.
of a finger.
I went into this organization. It was filled with a bunch of Christians, and I this is when I was like 1 year believer, and I was really discouraged because I was so far off from where I knew I needed to be, and these people were like really attacking me for not being like righteous or holy. And I told one of the guys one day, I was like, dude, I feel like I'm in there trying to take a pee, and you're standing behind me. You're like, yeah, take a pee, take a pee. And like now I can't go because you're standing behind me. I'm like, I'm sure if you just left, I would be able to pee just fine. And so I think you can give someone some kind of performance anxiety, and especially when you're trying to force them to see from your perspective. I think that's not a really a healthy way of going about it. So I think like giving some a level of validity to some of the stuff that they look. You've had these experiences. I would have had your experiences. I would have the same views that you have. I've had totally different experiences. I've had experiences where I've interacted with people from all over the world. So obviously, I'm not going to think like someone who's just have spent their whole life in the countryside. So I have to have like just a bit of compassion with dealing with people. But that being said, that leads me right into my next question: is do you believe that there is a place for far right groups like the Golden Dawn? I'm sure you're familiar with the Golden Dawn
Of
in
course.
Greece, like
Hmm.
a Nazi organization there. But in politics, I was wondering if you can give me your opinion on that.
Do I believe that they have a place in politics?
Mhm.
Well, as an American, I do believe in free speech, and I believe that
Sure.
everybody has the right to believe what they want to believe in. Do I believe it's correct? Of course not. I'm unfortunately I was on that path for a very long time, and I've seen the light now. Obviously, I've been out for about 3 years now,
Right.
but I'm all about free speech and freedom of expression and that sort of thing. But when it crosses the line, when they start talking about violence or hurting people,
Right, right,
that's
right,
where the trouble comes in. So when those lines are crossed, when those lines are blurred, then all of a sudden it's a completely different narrative. So well, these unpopular belief systems I don't think are good or healthy for our society. At the same time, we have
right,
to be careful to not um, with censorship and things like that, because what it does, I mean, it might feel good for the moment, to
right,
say, hey, we're going to censor these people, but what happens is it becomes sort of like not to do too many biblical references, but like the forbidden fruit in the Bible.
yeah, yeah,
And you're going to
seriously,
want a taste of that forbidden fruit. And a good example I can give on that, just from my youth, when I was a
right,
kid, I grew up listening to rock and roll, Motley Crue, all that kind of stuff. And I remember, and I was very into the news and watching historical stuff and news programs as well. And I remember a band, and the listeners might know the band, Two
Marilyn
Live
Manson.
Crew. Two Live
Oh,
Crew.
Two Live Crew, Two Live
Way
Crew.
back, way back. And Two Live Crew was coming out, and they were on Nightline and all these different programs. And I didn't listen to that kind of music. We didn't even have radio stations like that in the country out in the sticks where I grew up. But I tell you what, when I saw Two Live Crew was being banned from playing at different locations and things like that, I went out and got me a Two Live Crew cassette tape, and I got the next one and the next one after that too, and because they were banned. So that goes to that forbidden fruit story, and I do think when you start banning people for certain things, I think that that leaves us with an open door of having that element of being that forbidden fruit in a way.
Right. So I've talked about this, and I've said, look, the way that my mom, because my mom was a minister's kid. I was a minister's kid, and my mom would talk about how alcohol was like, she'd call it the devil's brew. And I'm like, the way that she talked about alcohol, I'm like, she might as well have driven me right down to that uh, bar and just open me up a tab and be like, I'll cover his bill, because like that's just precisely what she did. She would literally tell me crazy things like if I got tattoos, she was gonna cut them off of me. Man, I got tattoos all over head to toe, man. So, but where I would go with this, the reason why I ask you this is because my ex girlfriend is from Greece, and I spent some time in Greece, and and I mentioned already the Golden Dawn, but they say Greece is like the birthplace of a democracy. But when I went into like a key shop or something, and the guy straight up had like a communist sickle and hammer made with seashells, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe this guy's displaying this, and especially in a business, which is like the definition of irony, if I've ever heard of irony. But um, but that's what he's displaying. I'm like, well, in my opinion, if you allow far left groups and far right groups and pretty much everything in between, then it gives a better selection process. Like, I mean, if you just think Starburst has 5 flavors, and if you can't, everyone has their own type of flavor. And if you can't represent everybody with 2 or even 3 flavors, like you need a wide range in politics to represent everyone. And so just having these left wing or Democrats, it's like everybody does not fall in those categories. So having various different groups, and even the right wingers, if they have their little seats in there, people have to make alliances and stuff to get stuff passed. I think that would be better for the country and for democracy. But a two-party system is not a good system. I'll say that. Um,
Right.
you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a controversial subject, and personally, I think everybody does have like I said, as long as they're not crossing that line into violence, I think the best way to combat these type of extreme groups, whether it's communism on the left, whether it's National Socialism, Nazism on the right, things like that, is not by necessarily banning them, but by the right word is not coming to me, but instead of like destroying the ideology, pick it apart, pick it apart and say, look, this is why this
Dismantle.
isn't good. Like having that dialogue and going, look, this is not good. This is
Right.
not good for our society, and picking it apart because it's not a healthy way of looking at the world. So that's the way we do it, I think.
Right. So Jeff, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been the victim of any kind of bullying?
Hmm. I suppose. Yeah. I guess I would suppose so.
So one way you will shut down a bully is whenever you stop responding to the things that they're doing, because they do that to trigger some kind of response that they get some kind of glee from it. So my thing is, it's like, not, and again, not that I even want to destroy these like groups. I'm like, dude, I don't have the time to deal with you. I'm not going to go fight you. You're not worth the time for me to take out of what I'm doing, which is humanitarian work. I'm not going to go do that or protest you. You want to go protest, go to your protest. If nobody showed up and you're there and no news came, like that's the way to shut those kind of people down, in my opinion. And so I'm for fighting things like that, but just in a more sophisticated manner, because anybody could start punching or stabbing or shooting any person off of the street, any like thug or gang member can behave like that. It takes sophistication, and even to understand just the internal hurt of where these people are coming from. Because one of my favorite quotes, it might be from Buddha, and I'm not sure, but it says, "If you truly loved yourself, you could never hurt somebody else, because you would understand that you are ultimately hurting yourself and hurting someone else." So you don't see fulfilled, healthy people going out and attacking and debasing people. It's people who have internal struggles, people who are broken, people who do those kind of activities. And the healthier that they get, they don't want to behave in that kind of way anymore. So I'm like, I just couldn't care less if that's what I hate to say it, but I mean, if you want to live in that level, like, okay, here's an example. If you want to believe that the Earth's flat, like, that's your problem. That's not mine. I'm not going to go and try to knock down that the Earth isn't flat. Like, that's, you want to believe that kind of idiotic behavior. That's your problem. Now, I will talk to someone like that. I will engage them. I will love them. But belligerence towards someone like that, like, if you live in that level of ignorance, if you think the world is just as big as California or America, I genuinely feel sorry for you, because there's so much bigger of a world out there, right?
Yeah,
Don't you?
absolutely. Yeah.
But what do you what do you think about that strategy? God, this is so bad. Just ignore them. Like, go do your rallies, march around, parade. Like, no one's gonna come out to, you're good. Well, what do you think about that as like an insider?
I can say, speaking from experience on and if I told this story before on
Uh-huh.
the podcast,
Please
feel
tell
free to
it
cut
again.
me off. But
No,
um,
please. I think it's great.
we went to
I think
when I
it's.
was,
Well, I really think this story is great. I mean, some
you
of the
know the
stuff I gotta
story.
laugh. Please go.
Okay, so for the listening audience, then we had a rally when I was in the movement in a place in Mississippi, and it was with the NSM and the Klan. And we went out there, and there was hardly any protesters or anybody. What happened was the police, I guess, had closed down the area around there. We didn't know that at the time, but they weren't letting people in.
Uh-huh.
And the morale of the individuals that were there, and this is I'm coming from a leadership standpoint at the time. I was like, oh no, people aren't going to show up to our next rally because there's nobody fighting with us.
Oh my
There's nobody
God.
there. It was
Oh
like we were
God.
talking
I'm
to
so sorry.
ourselves.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You're
That
having way
that's
too
just.
much fun with this story.
I know I am. I apologize. It's just that's just actually, so I will share a little something. I sometimes give you some gentle jokes about your past, because and we're going to limit to this later, but I think one of the ways to just deal with it is like, okay, so I believe it was Superman back in like the 40s or 50s. They started doing some like subtle exposing of like the KKK. Oh, so I guess I'm sorry. So I guess it's Buddha who said that. I guess it was. Did I say it's Buddha? Mr. Thank you very much, Mr. Randolph Richardson. That is a beautiful quote right there. If you truly love yourself, you can never hurt another. I love that one.
It's
But
good.
yeah, it is. It's great. But the point being is that okay. So the point being is that by Superman taking on these not the KKK members in like this way, kind of like in a comedic fashion, was like it's like they were doing like a destigmatizing of it. So it's like me, it's like rather than trying to fight with like physical violence, I would rather fight something like that with ridicule. You know what I mean? Just pointing out the ridiculousness of these kind of beliefs. If you actually hold to these kind of beliefs, just how ignorant that is. Like those are really ignorant beliefs to hold on to. So if you want to hold on to them, be my guest. It's like if you want to believe that the Earth's flat or that the moon is like a projection, a hollow projection, be my guest. But don't be surprised if I make fun of you along the way. You know what I mean? Um, you know what I mean? Like you deserve ridicule. You deserve ridicule. I'm not going to go punch a flat earther in the face, but I'm also just not going to take them seriously. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately what it comes. I'm just not going to take you very seriously.
And see,
So
punching them in the face solves nothing.
right,
That what that does is it radicalizes that individual further. It pushes them further back into that echo chamber or that bubble, and it helps them to uphold that belief. I can tell you that from every single time we got into violent confrontations, that instilled that that belief in us further. It was never through violence.
By the way, Randolph, if you want to come in on here, I would love to hear from you. So I know you got a lot to say in the chat, so you're welcome to come on. But that being said, Randolph is an amazing credit to humanity. I think he'd have a lot to contribute to this conversation, should he so be inclined. But that being said, okay, all right. So the last time you okay, so the last time that you talked, or we talked, you said something that obviously, obviously. Okay, so I guess he does want to come on. So I'm gonna go ahead and send this to him real quick. But let's just say this. Let's just say okay. So I want to frame this correctly. Okay. The reason why okay, the reason why I wouldn't engage with the Nazi before, as I was talking about, part of it, it is just because, like, I don't want to physically go out and endanger myself in the first place. Okay, one, and I don't want to give them the time of day that they're trying to get. It's like, honestly, it's like the bully who's like flicking like a doing like a spitball at your neck or whatever. They're trying to get a reaction with you, so you just sit there and you keep letting them do it. These people are going to eventually just stop. So I'm like, I just don't want to give them the time of day. But the thing is, whenever you talked about how your organization specifically couldn't use violence unless it was done to you, and even in that video, I saw where I guess someone spray peppered you and you punched him, and you had that right to do because you were defending yourself, and so that gave you validity because it allowed you to do the things that you wanted to do. And I thought that was so interesting. I'll tell you why it's so interesting. Because in the first talk that you said, and I laughed about this too. I mean, it's not that it's funny. I was not laughing because I thought this was funny. I was laughing at the level of cognitive dissonance or ignorance that it took to say something like this in that moment. But you said, "Look, we didn't use violence," and you're like, and it's not because we thought violence was wrong. We were like, we just didn't want to go to jail or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, we don't have anything against violence, but if you come out with us with violence, we're going to use violence. It's not like we're a peaceful organization, but that was like what gave you the green light to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of it from that perspective. So if you want to expound on that a little bit, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, that's coming from a legal perspective. Where in the organization that I was in, and everybody, all the different groups operate differently. But
Hmm.
we knew that if we made the first strike, if we did violence to someone that was just standing there or anything like that, we were going to jail probably for a very long time. And then there's cases that back that up. So knowing a lot of people that went to jail or prison, over the years for fighting and striking first. So we always during that time period, when I was in the movement, we were under strict regulations, or I put the organization under strict regulations that you don't strike anybody unless you're hit first. And then beyond that, if someone you're fighting hits the ground, you can't start kicking them or jumping on
Oh,
them. Or
really? Really?
yeah,
Really?
that's illegal too, because that's
Oh,
excessive.
wow.
It's excessive. And like you
So,
said, it was not coming from a place of this moralistic
oh,
standpoint.
right, right, right,
I'm just being
right.
honest. I mean,
I
it's
know. I appreciate that.
it wasn't coming from this moralistic standpoint, like,
I
oh,
know. I
we're
know.
nonviolent. No, it was like, go ahead and strike us, because then we're going to
Right,
use our self-defense within the laws and defend ourselves. So that so it was the opportunity to have violence, but you always let the other side instigate it
right.
first. So
And
typically that was your Antifa, your communists and anarchists, and
right,
people of that nature that faced off violently, typically with groups like
right,
the MSM.
and right, and for the record, like legally, you're able to like go to the level in which there's a threat. So, for example, like let's say somebody pulls out a like let's just say like a cue stick, like for pool, and then you pull out like a bat, like that might be something that would equal, right? But if you pull out a knife and then you stab the person, that would be something where you're like you're going above what the person has. So, for example, if the person like pulls out like a cue stick and then you pull out a gun and you shoot them, you're gonna get a murder charge put on you, or at least a manslaughter. Whereas if the person starts shooting at you and then you pull out a gun and you shoot them, you're not going to get anything because you're meeting the level that you've that they've that they've inflicted on you. So if you get into a fist fight and you just pull out a gun and you shoot someone, there's no way you're not going to like go to to prison for something like that. But also too, as you're talking about, if you stop the threat, such as you've knocked the person out, and then you go and continue, like which I believe was like the case. If you saw the movie American History X with Edward Norton, and when he shoots the black guys in there, I'm sure had he just shot them and they died in the process, like there wouldn't have been anything. But he went so far over just shooting the people that was like the reason why he went going to prison. Where someone breaks into your house and tries to steal your stuff and you shoot them, like you're not going to go to prison for that. Now they start running down the street and you start shooting them in the back, you're definitely going to prison for something like that. So
Yeah,
totally.
and some of that depends on the state. I'm no lawyer, but I know that there's
Right,
different laws from state to state.
right, right, and yeah, totally. So I do have another question, and let's see. I am posting the link right now, Mr. Richardson. If you'd like to join us, Mr. Richardson is a credit to humanity, and he has to come on here for a couple of questions. I'd love to hear from him. He's Canadian. He's very proud of being Canadian. So yeah. So let's see. Number 4 is my fourth question I have is yeah. So you may not like that I'm going to say this, but
There's a lot of things that you say I don't like.
probably. But so let's just start here. You have received quite a bit of hatred from both sides from after leaving the movement, because people who leave the movement, they're seen as traitors, and then the people who like the Antifa, they still see you as a Nazi. So like you're kind of like between a rock and a hard place, right?
Well, yeah, being in the middle, being that moderate or that
Mm-hmm.
peacemaking voice. It's a little bit like being Switzerland in some ways, because yes, when you leave the movement and you start speaking out against it, You can leave. You can just leave and retire or whatever. Just quit and go away. And you can do that. I mean, depending on the group. If you're in like a gang or something, that's a little different. But if you're in one of the political orgs and you leave, you leave. But when you start speaking out and doing like what I'm doing, what a lot of the other formers do, they see that as being a traitor because they feel like their truth, their so-called truth, and you're speaking out against it. That makes you an enemy or a traitor. So there's those people, um, and I'm generalizing a little bit, and it's not everybody because there's a lot of people that are there that listen to what those of us that are formers are saying, and
Right.
they see that some of them, everybody's a little different, so it really just depends on how you project and what the things you say. Like, I don't attack the people. I don't say anything bad about the people. I don't like the ideology and I speak out against it, but I try to humanize the individuals that are in it. So I think that spares me some hate, but there's still a number of people that no matter what will view me as a traitor for speaking out
Yeah.
against racism and hate. And on the
Right.
other side of that, like the far left, far left extremes, a lot of them, I've heard some of the criticisms I've gotten from them were, if he was really out, he would have doxed everybody on the way out. He would have burned the organization down,
Right.
destroyed it, and things like that. And the thing is, this was a corporation. I had corporate responsibility. That would have been
Right.
illegal. It would have been immoral. And I'm not about doxing. I'm not about doxing now. I'm not about
Right.
causing harm to people. So they see it that way. So both sides, where I'm here in the middle, that there's people on both sides that don't like that, and I don't want to generalize both sides and say that all of them feel that way, but there is that really extreme element of both the far right and the far left that do act that way.
Yeah, Colleen has something to say here. Thank you very much for your Colleen, Miss Colleen. Did you go to Where'd you go to elementary or high school with her? She said she's really proud of you. And
Oh, I do see the comment there. I know exactly who that is. Thank you, Colleen. Really wonderful that you tuned in, and it's nice to hear from you.
yeah, thank you for that contribution. K through 12. Okay. My condolences for knowing Jeff that long. I've had the dishonor of knowing you a few months now. Just my very. I feel like Jeff is my brother, and you know what the reality is that there's probably a great deal of people who will forever see you as a Nazi, and especially if you haven't had a dysfunctional past like me, being an alcoholic before I became a believer. I was an alcoholic. I was someone who was verbally abusive to my wife, someone who no regard for my wife's feelings. If I cheated on her, if I verbally abused her, um, and so if I'm coming from that background, I have zero legs to look at you and to try to blame you for your past. I have none. I have no legs to stand on. And so if I had like this squeaky clean past, maybe I might be a lot more inclined to be judgmental and towards you. But that's just not the reality of Isaiah Perez. Isaiah Perez, before I met Jesus Christ, there's like there's a AC and there's a BC. There's a before Christ and there's an after Christ, and He's totally changed my life. And that's why I don't. I just anything I could do, anything I would do that would discourage you to leaving whatever movement you're in or pursuing the path that you're on. I will never seek that, and you know this. Um, I've been very supportive of what you guys are doing there because I strongly believe in your message. I mean, it's like I say, talk is cheap. I could say I support you all day, but unless I'm willing to put my money where my taters are, it's just talk. You know what I mean? So, Randall, we'll let you in a minute here. So just sit
I
tight.
want to thank you for that as well. I mean, you have been an incredible supporter and friend. I really do appreciate it. And we all have our pasts, and you can't live in the past. If
Yeah,
you live in the past, you're going to torture yourself all the time, and you'll
sure,
never move forward. You got to live in the now and in the present,
sure.
and what you're doing now is what matters.
So um, that being said, all that as a preface, this is harsh conversation now, but it's a reality. It's like I didn't become a Christian, and then that changed everything from my past. It's like I still had to deal with every single mistake that I've made. All those ghosts come back to haunt me, including my wife. And one of them, I will tell you this, including almost killing my wife, my daughter, because we had to come back to America to get remarried while she was 5 months pregnant. And while we went back to America, my daughter, she had to have an emergency surgery because the stress of everything was too much. And my daughter almost died as a result of that. So my past actions almost caught up to me and killed my daughter. So whenever I tell you these things, you got to understand I'm telling you from the level in which I understand. There's no judgment to be had as far as that goes. But you cannot think that you can leave a movement for 27 years and sow that level of hatred and uncomfortable way that you've made people feel, and think that you get to turn around and walk away and be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, like it's all right, like my life is just free now from that. You have karma that is going to catch up with you one way or another, and just leaving a movement doesn't clear you from karma, you know. And so on one hand, I openly welcome those kind of things that happen to you or me, and say we have stuff that, like, you can't, I can't, I can't abuse my wife, say I'm sorry, and think that tomorrow she's just gonna not be afraid of me anymore. I'm gonna have to win back that trust. You know what I mean? You have to do the due diligence and do the day in and day out, and then when people start to see that, they can see your heart and your intentions. And but it's like that is a debt that you owe to society. It's a debt that you owe to the universe, and by what you're doing is you are releasing that karma. And I, if I had even 1% doubt in you, brother, or your organization, you know how much I've sown into you sacrificially. I wouldn't do that. But it's like I would be a liar to tell you you become a Christian and then your past is just totally erased. Like you are going to um, receive the due. It's called reaping it. Jesus just says it. It's like you're going to reap what you've sowed into this universe. So if you've sowed hatred for 27 years, expect some of that to come back to you. You know what I mean? That's just the universe that we live in. We don't live in a universe where I drop this pin and it goes flying up in the air. We live in a universe, you drop something, it comes back down. That's like the law of attraction. So that's not to put you down, but that's just, if I presented it in any other way, it would be dishonest to you, it would be dishonest to me, and it would be dishonest to people who are thinking about joining the movement. Like, don't join it. You might have some of this stuff come back to haunt you later. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You're better off to not join. That's the reason why
Yeah.
I say that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What do you got to that? And I say that as love to you, brother. You know?
No, I agree. I mean, when I say that, I'm not dismissing the past, because we do carry that. We carry that guilt, that shame, all of those things from our past. It does go with us, you know. But also, and it's important to remember when I say that, like, we're living in the now and we need to, you know, do good things in the future and what we're doing right now. That doesn't mean to forget the past, because we learn from our mistakes. We learn from those life experiences, that lived experience. And it was, you know, when I first got out, and through that, especially during that first year, I really took myself to task a lot. And it was people of the Jewish faith and Black people, other people of other races that had said to me, Jeff, you need to stop beating yourself up over the past. And I said, I'm not doing that. Yes, you are. I listen to you. I see it. I can see it. I can sense it. Stop. What you're doing now is what matters. So, and I think it meant a lot to me. I tell you what, hearing that, especially from people, not necessarily those specific individuals, but especially from the people that I villainized the most. For them to say things like that, that was it meant so much. And it's something that we try to convey to the people that we're working with too, to help in changing that they have to do the work. You have to do the work. It's not just like a magic bullet or a magic pill that you can swallow and say, oh, I'm done. All better now. No. But it does take work. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say this, man. I've gone now to several dozen countries. I've met thousands of people from all over the planet, bro. I got to tell you, I've been most impressed by your story, out of anybody I've met, because to go from where you were, 27 years in the movement, that level of vitriol, of hatred, of ugliness inside of you, and to see the guy who you are today, that is a journey, brother, that is so powerful. I mean, it is so utterly powerful. You may see as like your past, like that's the bad thing, but that's like so much more powerful. It's like, I like, what would you think if like I cut off your leg and then like you train, and like next year you went and became like an Olympian? Like that would be like a really big deal to overcome those kind of odds. So to go where you've gone from, it's like because most people aren't going to be on these extremes as to be either a peace advocate or someone who's trying to spread Nazism like that. So those are very extreme. Most people are operating in the middle ground. You know, most people are more middle of the ground. So to go from here to showing that level of hatred and discord and ugliness in the universe to being where you are now, to spreading a message of love and light, it's just extremely powerful, you know. And with that being said, I want to get a preference to this next guest. He's coming in. I don't say this lightly. I have a podcast with as a Christian. I have a podcast with. I have a message from. Sorry, just got a message here. So I have a. Sorry, someone is just posting some bad message right now. But I have a. Okay, so I have a podcast. This podcast, I normally have atheist co-hosts, and we've talked to a lot of atheists. Excuse me, and a lot of people. We have very civil conversation. You know, it's just called respect, humility, empathy. You can find me a Nazi. I'd really like to talk to a Nazi, just or KKK member. I'd really like to have a discussion, just to, you know, I see where they're actually coming from. If you know any who might want to come on, who are in the movement, by the way, not like formers. I want to talk to some formers, but I generally want to hear the arguments that they're trying to say. You know, we try to see things from other people's perspective, but there has been one person who's come on with so much respect and so much goodwill, and he's such a great person that I would vouch for so much more than a lot of other Christians I know. And his name is Randolph Richardson, and he is, I believe he's American, and he's going to be joining us right now. So I got to move this screen. I'm going to add him right now. Randolph, you're American, right, Randolph?
I think your autocorrect is going really on the fritz today. If it's spelling Canadian as American. There we go.
Randolph, thank you. Oh yeah. Well, you are American, though. You are North American, so I'm just technically right. But
yeah, I'm Canadian. Yeah, I'm not American.
So Randolph, you've been listening thus far. I was wondering if you could give us any feedback that you've had.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't join right from the very beginning, but you know, this is fascinating. Congratulations to you, Jeff, on making a wonderfully positive change in your life. This is great.
Thank you, sir.
You seem much happier, I'm assuming, now than probably you were before. And yeah, quality of life is very important. And you know, my hope is that when people make these kind of decisions, they're doing it entirely on their own free will. Mm-hmm. That's the important thing from my perspective.
Yeah. So we do have these last two questions, and I will take more of a backseat on both of these. So I will ask, how do you suggest that we agree to disagree on some issues? Because as much as we want to say that, like, we got to be respectful and stuff, like, we're just clearly, if I talk to Randolph Richardson, he doesn't believe in God. And I know that God exists. So that's a pretty big gulf in there, because he hasn't had that experience and I've had that experience. So it's like there is a gulf there that's unfillable. So there are clearly going to be things that we don't agree upon. But one thing that we will positively agree on is treating each other with respect. It doesn't matter if we have zero, we agree on nothing, which we do find a lot of common ground to agree upon. So I'm wondering if I could get both of you guys in on that. Either of you, get in.
Go ahead, Jeff. If you're the guest of honor here tonight, you can start if you like.
He's got to direct the questions at one or the other, or we're going to be interrupting each other. So, thank you. But yes, finding commonalities, you guys, is really where it's at, and we all don't have to agree on everything. I mean, what a boring world it would be if everybody agreed on everything. And someone put it to me this way once. They said, if you look out on a field of flowers and it's all sunflowers and you go, wow, that's really nice, that's really beautiful. What if the whole world was like that and there was none different? Wouldn't you rather have a field full of wildflowers with all the different colors and things like that? And I thought, wow, I'm going to remember that, because that I like that. And that's exactly, I think, what we have here as humanity. And the same thing could be said about the different religions, the different colors, the different ethnicities, and so on and so forth, even different people's politics. It's like, we may not agree with certain sides, but if we all do have some things in common. And those commonalities are the ties that bind us as humanity.
Overall, I find diversity to be more advantageous than disadvantageous. It has characteristics of both, of course. And it's never sit well with me when a politician comes along and says diversity is a strength. No, it's either an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on which aspect of diversity you're talking about. And the free exchange of ideas is something that I promote, and that's what's happening here. So this is great.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, first of all, Randolph and I had one of the longest talks I've had with any of the atheists. But then we talked for like 2 hours afterwards, man.
It was really nice.
Literally, we talked.
I enjoyed that.
We talked a long time. Half the time I was crying my eyes out because we were talking about a really sensitive topic involving the abuse of trans people. I will throw this out there. That is an issue in which don't believe that is a right way about going about your life, but if that's a decision that people make, it's like I have enough respect for people's individual autonomy to say that I may not agree with this, but I'm not going to abuse anyone. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I may have my own beliefs, but that doesn't mean I have to express my beliefs to you, or that I have to try to hurt you or try to attack you or try to pass laws that are going to hurt you. I'm a Christian, but I'm just like kind of live and let live. God, I believe that God has given us free will. And so I'm not trying to use the government to try to enforce what my ideas about the universe and morality and sexuality are, So that being said, I do have one more question here. And yeah, what are your suggestions for world peace? And I'll let Randolph get on this one first, because it seems pretty much impossible to have world peace because there's always wars going on. But like, what do you think we could be doing today that will make tomorrow more peaceful? Randolph?
There's quite a lot of things. High up on the list is get rid of money so that we can, because that's going to be an important key to solving poverty, I think. So there's a lot of people who hoard a lot of money. And then we need to have better public education that also teaches people philosophy, starting right from kindergarten, and logic and things like that. We're getting better at adding critical thinking curriculum here in Canada, but I know a lot of countries aren't doing that yet. Some are very interested in starting to do that now, and some have quite a number of years ago started on that. So I think we're generally heading in the right direction, but in the current climate, I just don't see it happening. I see a lot of countries are divided amongst their citizens, not just the U.S., and that's a problem. Like, we even see some division here, and there's the biggest problem is bigotry and people wanting more power and wanting more control of more people and more land, and that's kind of, I think, at the heart of a lot of the issues and problems that we experience. And so.
Oh, that was a lot there, but that's wow.
I tried to keep it brief. I'm sorry.
No. Thank you. That's some good stuff there, Randolph. Jeff?
Yeah, as far as world peace, I mean, again, where do you start? I mean, there's so many different things. Sometimes I think to myself, if the Earth was under assault by foreign alien forces from another planet, then all of those issues that you'd have between the countries, between the races, between the religions, none of that would matter. I'm not advocating for an alien invasion or anything like that.
Most people, I think for most people it would cease to matter. Not all, but most. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, we have to start just looking at each other as human beings, and instead of saying, you know what, I don't. And even in the United States right now, we have politicians, top leading politicians, and I'm not naming any of them, but where they're villainizing the other side completely, calling them domestic enemies and using strong language like that. And I try to stay away from top politics, you know that, but my gosh, that kind of rhetoric has to stop. I mean, we're not children. We're not children.
Yeah.
We shouldn't act like that.
It's not advancing the nation. It's not advancing society. I totally agree. Yeah.
Right. And you know, yeah, Jeff, that's a really good point, because, and this is the reason why I was talking about why I do believe that, like, the Nazis should be able to have their National Socialist group, the communists should have their groups, Antifa should make some kind of group, political group, not using violence, but like everyone should just be at the table having conversations and having their parties who actually might have a chance at winning some seats. And so I would just like to see everyone's opinions not necessarily respected, because some people have some pretty dangerous ideas. There are people who do have some dangerous ideas, but we do live in a free country. We do, you know, there are still values in which we have to say, like, I mean, probably the best case of this was the Jewish man who, Jewish lawyer who represented like the KKK members in court because they were being denied permits because to protest because they were Nazis. And so it's like some things you stand on principle. Like you stand on principle. I stand on principle that if you want to believe in white superiority, that's your problem. That's not mine. You know, you want to write your stuff about white superiority, like go wild.
It becomes a problem when they start becoming policymakers, though. And you see, this is why I like to emphasize that people are more important than ideas. Ideas are tools, and they're useful tools, especially the really good ideas. But you know, we need to see more of John Rawls' theory of justice, the veil of ignorance in lawmaking, creation and modification than we do.
Yeah. So the point is that if the people aren't demonize themselves, just the ideas more, because just I don't know, from having experienced what I have and having lived 10 years in South Korea and realize how many times I've not been able to understand where these people are coming from, either my wife or her parents or people at school or at church. It's like I can't understand these people. Like there's some of it you could be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can maybe see some cultural things here or there. But then sometimes people are just like, they're just so far out there, like I can't really make sense of it. But and I'm sure actually I'm married to an Asian, and Randolph, you're married to an Asian, right?
Chinese, yeah.
Chinese. So you understand what I'm saying probably more than most people, whenever your cultures coming into clash. And but you have to respect both sides. You know, I've had to respect some things about my wife that are absolutely pointless to me. Like, for example,
I haven't seen too much of that because I find the Chinese culture tends to have a very strong, accommodating kind of aspect to it. But yeah, there certainly are differences where people are like, "Oh, why is it like this?" You know. So I do understand. I think what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, for example, my wife just does not like to mix white rice with anything. So I like to mix it with everything because I can't stand to eat white rice. So if I make a meal and I mix it in there, she's not going to eat it. And so it really angers me that I've spent all this time and I've done that. And I could sit there and I could argue about that, how meaningless that is, but she's just not going to eat it. So I have to respect that. You know, I have to respect that's something that has to do with the way that she likes to eat her rice. Rice is a really big deal to Asian people. But as we get ready to wind up, Jeff, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to say?
Well, that's really a blank slate. What thoughts on what, though? There's so many thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Get at it.
Well, just that I think we should all focus on all the good things that we can do in the world. I mean, it really, coming out of an environment where I wasn't promoting too many good things. Now I try to see the good in everything, and try to see the good in life, and the good in society, and the good in other people. And it's so much more of an incredible way to look at things, and to look at others, than to be angry all the time, or to feel like you're at war with the world. And being involved in an extremist group, whether you're on the right, the left, a cult, whatever you want to call it, being involved in those things is a very unhealthy way to look at the world, to look at others. And it's not something that anybody wants to get involved in. I mean, they shouldn't want to get involved in it. I can just say, speaking from experience, that it's not a healthy way to look at the world. And when you start viewing others through a different lens, it opens up a whole, it's like Christmas or something, it's like you have this whole new outlook on society. And it's such a good way to look at things. And I just want to pass that on to everybody that's listening.
Did you say Christmas?
Christmas, Yule, your birthday, whatever.
Yeah, because Randolph is an atheist over here, so I don't think they celebrate Christmas, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we celebrate Christmas.
He knew where I was going with that.
I'm totally joking.
No, most atheists celebrate Christmas that I know.
I'm totally messing with you.
Hey, we could say it's a pagan holiday if we want to get down to it. Hey,
yeah, it's a mixture of a lot of things, actually.
Right?
Actually, with my atheist co-host, I do make fun of them. Like I will. One of them's from like Australia, one of them's from the UK, so I will make fun of the UK or Austria, like in a very joking, banting manner, because what happens is, we start off with, I don't believe in God and you believe in God, or the opposite way around, there can be like this, I just got to beat you in this debate. And if you're attacking my ideas that are very sacred to me, like you're attacking me. So a lot of these conversations get really ugly, and you've seen quite a bit of our conversations, Miranda. Have you ever seen anything get ugly on this channel?
I haven't seen all your videos yet, but no, I haven't seen anything get ugly. You're always really nice to talk with.
Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts yourself, Randolph?
Sorry, what were you asking me?
Do you have any last thoughts yourself, sir?
Oh, last thoughts. Well, I don't want to take the show away from you guys. You just brought me in to share a bit of perspective. But I'll say one thing is,
hold on. You're a wise sage. You got great white hair on your head, which means you're probably smarter than Jeff or I combined.
No. This is blonde hair, which means I'm the dumbest guy here.
Hit us with some wisdom.
So I in the activism work that I'm doing in the atheism demographic, we're specifically not trying to convert or deconvert people. It's my attitude is that this is something that people should really be deciding for themselves without pressure, and that's important, because then it's more likely to be a genuine choice. One that they're fully comfortable with, because I do notice there are people who get pressured into one way or another, and then it doesn't always stay long term for them, right? So, and that is it isn't the concern for me that people are switching. It's the concern is that it's disruptive to their lives, and I think it's better if it's less disruptive. And so if people are kind of making the choice completely for themselves, then it's less likely to be disruptive.
That's what I call it evangelical atheism, which is the atheism that wants to go out and deconvert and to dehumanize Christians. I mean, it really is just dehumanizing. There's no other way to get around it. That if you post things like saying, like if you don't agree like on something, whatever, like I don't agree with Thor or Odin or Freya. Jeff might actually, but I don't believe any of that stuff. But
you're talking about a religion called Asatru.
It's an inside joke. Well, it's kind of inside going towards Jeff, but whatever it is that you might believe in. Okay, I don't believe in that, but I'm not. I don't believe in astrology either, but I'm not. It would take too much of my time to go down and knock down someone's views who doesn't believe in astrology. And furthermore, if that actually helps a person, if palm reading or astrology, I'm not going to go after something that's actually helping someone. And so the thing is people like me, my life has been recentered and it's been reformed through the message of the gospel. So, as a humanitarian, I simply cannot understand why atheists, if you believe in humanitarianism, why you would go after something that's helping someone. Now, the destructive stuff, we're on the same page because, like, the transphobia, the homophobia stuff, I totally get that. But, like, that's not a part of everyone's Christianity, The hate speech, the bigotry, that we can stand together and go against that. But to think that I'm not intelligent because I believe in something that I've experienced is a non sequitur. You haven't had those experiences. That's fine. I have had the experiences. I know that Jesus Christ exists. He's changed my life. I've spoken to him, and so you don't have to believe that, but you don't need to belittle me for not having had those experiences yourself, right?
I think it's unfortunate that people will equate belief with stupidity, because that's not realistic. There are incredibly intelligent people who are religious and theists, and others who are atheists, just like there are really dumb people in both camps as well. And so it's just, and most people are somewhere in between, hopefully at the higher end for all, and I like to take one example is the person who heads up the Human Genome Project, which requires a huge, tremendous amount of intelligence to run that properly and to understand what's going on and set policies correctly and manage all these people. And that person running it is a theist. He's a Christian. So, he was a good friend of Christopher Hitchens, who is a highly intelligent atheist. So you've got...
Right.
You've got both groups represented right there in this example right off the bat. So, and the studies have shown that there really isn't any correlation there between a level of intelligence and whether somebody believes in deities. There's no correlation.
And I appreciate that, and I actually just highly appreciate you coming on, Randolph. I really hope to see you as a monthly host. You are. I told you, I believe you're a credit to humanity. And I would pick you over Darth Dawkins or an Untangelo any day of the week. That just goes without question. Like, I'd go out for a beer with you any night of the week. Do they have good beer in Canada?
Yeah, we make them cold though. So apparently Germany's got us beat because they have warm beers. They don't need to cool them.
Actually, yeah. But Belgium, I got to say this from having been both places. Belgium, you can literally go to the bars in Belgium. You're gonna think this is not true, but it is true. You could literally get 200 beers at one bar. They somehow put them in the basement and they shoot them up there. So I mean, I've never been. I mean, I've been to some places that have had maybe 30 or 40 beers on tap, but you could go into a bar in Belt and like unbelievably good beer too.
Are you talking like the selection of 200 different kinds of beer?
Yeah, at a bar.
Okay, not drinking 200 in one night. Okay, good. Just make sure you correctly.
Unless you're German, maybe Germans might be able to drink that much. But yeah, can you guys tell me? Can you guys tell me real quick before we head out here, how we can find you online or your website or anything like that, Mr. Randolph?
Oh, okay. So people can find me. I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Randolph Richardson, and Randolph ends with a letter F, no matter what autocorrect tells you. You can also find me on Twitter at Randolph828. My organization's website is www.canadianatheists.ca. Thank you very much for having me on. I think I'm just going to exit here so you can finish talking with your guest uninterrupted, if that's all right.
Thank you.
All right. It's a pleasure to meet you, Jeff.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. Good night.
Mr. Schoep? Mr. Two Scoops?
Yes?
How can I find you?
Oh, jeffschoep.com is my personal website, and the organizational website is beyondbarriersusa.org. That's beyondbarriersusa.org.
And I understand you just had a speaking engagement at a school. Do you have anything else coming up? Any speaking engagements coming?
I will be, yes, I was just speaking at a high school this week, and upcoming is there's going to be some events in Chicago and also in Florida. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming up. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but
Wow.
we're always posting stuff online.
That sounds very exciting. Well, I certainly this has been the last. I wanted to do a very thorough 3-part series on you, so this is going to be the last of the 3-part series we've done. But your insights have been uh, invaluable. Like I could tell you what I think as a Mexican, like living in Asia. Uh, you know what I mean? Like I could tell you, I give you my perspective, but as a former Nazi German, like I have no idea what you've gone through, and so hearing your perspective it's beautiful, and I think it's a beautifully amazing story. I hope to see a book about it or a movie about it one day. I would definitely pay to see your story. It's a fascinating story, and it's not finished written. It's unfolding before us, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I'm very, very, very grateful. I'm with you for the journey, brother. So that being said, I want to thank you for joining us today at RT Podcast. Visit our website at www.rtpodcast.com. Check us out at Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Check us out Spotify, just about everywhere you can find us. Anchor, you can find us. And so we're having these conversations. Even if we don't always agree, we can agree to always be respectful. And with that being said, we want to leave you with this video, and good night.